Welcome to the Round Table. I am Jennifer Eller, and with me today is my co-host, Mike Hill, and our producer, Nick Wilson, and our guests today are Herb and Jana Gass.
Yay.
Welcome.
Thanks.
How long have you been at Life Church?
Oh boy, I was afraid of that question.
Well, you can just say anything. Nobody will
No,
know.
we
2
came.
years?
We came during COVID.
Okay.
I want to say 2020.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is that when COVID was?
Yeah.
I always even forget.
It was
that.
20 or 21 when we started coming. Our son Caleb's attended here for several years prior to that, and he just said, "Hey, we're still meeting." So,
Yeah.
ours was online mostly. So we just wanted to be in a church family. So we started coming at that time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. So what do you guys like to do? Do anything fun together? Do you have any hobbies together?
Most of our stuff is we do together, really. Just anything
Yeah.
outdoorsy, hiking,
I
stuff,
love to hike.
skiing. We just went on a family trip here a month ago now,
No, at Christmas. Over
Christmas time. But yeah, and then the boys like anything with motors that makes a lot of noise. So
So how old are your children?
Yeah, no, I wouldn't
Okay,
know
Dad,
anything.
answer.
I'm always-
I
Put you on
should
the
force
spot.
him to answer, shouldn't I?
Caleb's 26,
27.
27.
Alicia is 30.
30. Yeah, I knew Alicia just turned 30. So
Yeah.
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 Awesome.
Wow. So skiing part of it, like if that's something you guys did growing up, like with your kids, did
Yeah.
you did?
Well, he did. I did.
Okay.
Yeah, we did because we took the kids. Plus, we did a lot with the youth. We helped a lot with the youth before our previous church, so we were always taking the kids up. So our kids just came along, and then we just kind of started going as well. And
Yeah, that's what I was telling Sarah. All my kids learned on youth trips, so
Yep.
they all went, and then I would teach youth kids, and then they were really little, so then they would ski in between my legs the whole time.
yeah,
You know, pretty soon they're good, and then they kept coming on trips, and then you just keep doing each one of them
Yeah.
after that. So they all learned, do that. In fact, Lexi was just at Cabernet this weekend because that's where we used to do all of our
Fun.
Oh,
youth
fun,
skiing
yep.
trips
Yeah.
up in Cadillac, and
Yep.
there used to be like a youth retreat right
Yep.
off of that, so you could go stay at the retreat and then go, ski at the
well,
same time.
there's tell you how old I am. There used to be a place to ski in Wawasee. You're literally it was an old gravel pit that you skied into the back of.
I mean, this is like something
Wow.
legal,
Huh? Yeah.
Like this was something.
Oh
like,
yeah.
If they had enough snow.
If they had enough snow, we went.
Did you go like in a circle or something?
It's basically
I mean-
you're on a rope, you go up and you're down and you're back up. But then we started going up into Michigan and farther and adventuring up, and we finally got up to like Boyne Mountain. And
Right.
So then this year we finally went to the big times and went out to Colorado. So
Yeah. Was that the first time you've been to Colorado?
it was.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did
Yeah.
you ski, Jana?
I did not.
Okay, I didn't think you were going to.
Yeah. No.
That's
I'm-
really not your thing.
I'm the lodge dweller. Give me a good book and I'll sit by the fire.
But yeah, but you were sick this time, weren't
I got
you?
sick
Yeah.
when we got
Aw.
there, so I
Now-
was the home dweller while they went out and had fun.
You got sick
Yeah,
right
I
when you
did.
got there?
I did.
Oh, that's awful.
The night before we flew out, I
Ugh.
got the worst sore throat ever, and then it went downhill from there.
And you had to fly and travel.
yeah,
Oh,
yeah. So anyway,
yeah.
I was kind of down and out for Christmas Day and the day after, and then I perked back up again. But
Plus, most of the days we were out, it was single digits. Like it was
Yeah.
Oh,
7
my.
and 8 the whole time. So
I
that's
was
what we were
perfectly
skiing.
content sitting by the fire,
For sure.
Yeah, the
watching
la-
it snow
Yeah.
outside.
The last time we went to Colorado was during COVID, and they wouldn't, unless you had a vaccination card, you couldn't get into the lodge. So you would ski, and you'd be out there, and I'm like, got icicles hanging off your beard.
Can't go in and thaw
They
out.
have a little hallway, like it's cordoned off. You could go in and go to the bathroom, but then you had to sit outside the rest. You couldn't go into any of the warming stations.
That's
That's
crazy.
interesting.
Oh,
I
my.
was like, Breckenridge, I am never coming back. I
Wow.
was so mad. I'm like, seriously? You go up to
Yeah.
the door and have guards,
Wow.
Yeah.
vaccination card guards
I could-
back in the
yeah.
day.
I could see that from Colorado. So.
Yeah. So,
Wow.
yeah, the first time we went with the Hoppers out there.
Oh, yeah.
So it was on Caleb and senior year, so Brady would have been a junior. We get in the gondola, so we're going up, and I didn't even think about this, but pot was legal out there. I mean, it's been legal out there for a long time, and so the guys in the thing are offering the boys gummies, and I'm
Yeah.
like, I don't think you should take food. And Brady's like, those are not regular gummies. Oh, pot gummies.
Yes.
Yeah, I never
Yeah.
really even thought about it, but that's back
They had a
then.
dispensary in the middle of one of the mountains that we
they
were on.
really?
Yeah.
Up off the backside. It's called the
I'd have been
that
skiing,
whole
I may have
section
been
area is called
stopping
Mary Jane.
No,
It was called what?
Mary
Called Mary
Jane.
Jane.
That can't be good for people to be skiing high. I mean, that just can't be like.
I guess it's no worse than the people who always carry their flask around
Oh, I
all the
was going
time.
to say, more people than you think are skiing
Yeah.
drunk.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, because in Colorado, like, you can ski halfway down, there's a bar.
Yeah.
Oh
You know, tons of people will just ski into the bar and
Yep.
hang out at the bar, and and then
It's very true.
I live a sheltered life because that's
But I would
craziness.
say a lot. I mean, people that are drinkers tend to carry a flask of whiskey with them
Oh my gosh!
all the time whenever
Yep.
they're skiing.
Wow. Wow. So you read books. So what kind of books do you read, Jana? we'll just move on here.
Let's change the subject.
Alcohol and drugs. I don't think that's what we want to be known for. So
No, definitely not.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like to read some, but not a ton. But if I do read, I like to read true stories, like true stories of missionaries or, things that really happened.
yeah.
Martyr stories and things like that. Yeah. So that's what
Are
I
you a
get
reader?
into.
I am.
Okay.
Yep. Alicia and I usually here lately. Alicia usually passes me her books she
Yeah.
has.
They're big
and
readers.
a lot of it's either war stories or same thing. Like we just got done reading called the Alice Network. It's World War One. There was ladies that wanted to help with the war but weren't allowed to be soldiers, so they recruited them to actually be spies. And the Germans never paid any attention to them, and they turned out to be these valuable assets of the war.
The Alice
Wow.
Network.
Yep.
Huh.
Yep.
Did you ever read, like, from a missionary, the Jerusalem to Irwin Jawa, that talks about, what's that guy's name? He went over to China.
Oh, I know who you're
I,
talking.
I can't remember
Yeah, I
his
know who
name.
you're talking about too. I can't
Yeah.
think of it.
It was it's a really cool book.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
when I went over to Guatemala, the guy, we go a couple times a year, and when I was thinking about being a missionary, he's like, you need to read this book, From Jerusalem to Irwin Jawa. And I'm like, what?
Yeah.
I mean, what kind of a weird, but it was a great book from the concept of a guy that essentially gave up everything, became a part of the culture,
Right.
and
Yeah.
started, a missionary movement over there. And I'm like, that's hardcore.
Yeah.
You
It's
know that.
when you see the people like that. We had a couple like that that came into the tribe and refused to build because the problem is too many Westerners come in and they want to build a Western house in the tribe.
Right.
They'll build a house, keep it simple, but they said they wouldn't do that. They lived in a grass hut just like everybody else did. It got to the point to where the locals said, "No, you're not a local. You need to build a regular hut." But they had a lot of respect for them,
Right.
and they did the respect that they held, and it makes a big difference on kind of breaking the ice on getting in.
Yeah, whether you fit in or not.
Yeah, whether you're part of the tribe or not.
Yeah.
So
I always think that's interesting. The whole, that's been a big question for the past even 5 or 6 years. Like, how does a Western missionary fit into going over and immersing themselves into culture, and how helpful is it, and what does
Right.
it really look like? That's been a big discussion, which I'm sure we'll get into when you guys talk about your missionary journey. So we're ahead of the game. Sorry.
Hey, we could talk about it now if you want to, but I think we need to back up a little
Yes.
bit. It's
Sure.
like, that is part of your story, but what did it look like prior to that? What was your journey to faith? Like, what was it like as a kid? And did you go to church as a kid?
Yeah, I grew up in a Christian home. We were always in church when the doors were open.
And you're from
Yeah.
here, like
I'm
you're from
here.
Huntington.
Yeah, I
Okay.
grew up in Union Church, born and raised in Union Church.
Oh wow.
Yeah, my dad died at a very young age, 61. The closer I get to it, the more young it sounds. But
How
yeah,
old was he?
61. So he died in 1992. So he's been gone a long time. But yeah, no, I grew up in a Christian home, and
Did you take
Yeah.
mission trips as a kid?
I did not.
You did not. Okay.
That's kind of a whole story in
Yeah.
itself that we could get into, but I can let Herb say how he grew up.
I grew up in a Catholic family, always going to church, But the biggest thing for me was I just didn't see a difference in people's lives. And especially as a teenager, I'm looking at that going, I see what they do all week, and then I see what they do on Sunday, and I'm like, I don't.
Even
I
as a
don't-
teenager,
Yeah, I
that's
don't-
something that stuck out.
Yeah, I don't see a difference. And I had a couple instances of just things that happened along the way. Like I got another backup, just interesting. We met at church camp when we were 9 years old.
Wow, so you guys are one of them.
He liked me. We saw each other once a year at church camp. He liked me every year. He followed me around, I say, like a little puppy dog. And I thought he was so gross. Like, get away from me. Get away.
Well,
Wait a
9
second,
years
you're
old.
You're from Huntington too, right?
Wells County. I grew up in Wells County.
He went to Norwell.
So my aunt would invite us to church camp, and we started going to church camp. And I could see the difference between the two churches. And it always kind of like, something's different here. And then I remember probably one of the biggest factors that really changed my life was my sister had gotten married. My oldest sister got married, and her husband's family had a house fire. They had 7 kids, lost everything. I had mentioned it at church for a prayer request because it was literally like the night before. No questions asked. The gentleman, good friend of mine, now he passed away, but came up to me and he goes, "We would like to help." I'm like 12 or 13, and I'm going, okay. He handed me a very large check and said, "Could you make sure and get this to them?"
Really?
Oh, yeah.
Wow, he must have thought you were responsible. I mean, that's pretty
So
impressive.
that right there just was like, wait a second. I've been to church my whole life, but I've never seen anything like that to where and that was just the life. That was the normal that I saw over and over again of when things happened we had a group of us couples that basically all grew up and raised our kids together and everything else. And we had a crew of guys that if you needed to remodel a house, we had a roofing crew literally. Went around and we did like 10, 12 roofs one year because everybody was buying houses and starting in. And we dug a couple graves for kids for a couple families that didn't have enough money to pay for the funeral and just live life that way. And it was just.
So did you guys keep going? Because I feel like you got fast forward a lot. We were at 9 years old, you chasing around and thought you were a disgusting little boy.
When I got my driver's license, my dad's kind of different thinking was, I don't care where you go, you just need to believe in something.
Okay.
So I'm like, it's my option. I'm going that way.
You were still chasing her.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm
He
going
started
that.
coming to our church.
And you didn't think he was gross then? The older he got, did he become less gross?
He asked me out on our first
I sure
date.
hope so. She married him.
I married him. I got over that part, I guess. But no, when we were 16, he asked me to go to a ball game down at Markle Park with him, and that was kind of our first official, non-official date, I guess. But
Yeah, because her parents didn't like me at the
and
time.
they didn't like him at all.
Until they
How
found
come? Because they thought he was
They
gross
thought
too?
he was a heathen, and
I was the rough farm kid.
He was pretty
hillbilly
rough at
farm
that time.
kid. Yeah.
yeah.
Like, describe rough. Maybe you should describe rough.
I did not live my life the greatest growing up. I mean, we kind of did whatever we wanted to do when we wanted to do it. We were the party
Said what
till
you
it
thought.
said what you thought. My mouth was horrific, and just rough kind of farm kid that.
Yeah, so growing up in the church, but then you guys start to date. And so was that a
Well,
big deal to you that he
and
was...
my parents found out who he was related to in our church. Like him, you probably know Ron and Julie Getz. Him and Julie are first cousins.
Oh.
So they're the ones that got him and his brothers and sisters coming to church camp. So as soon as my parents found out they were connected to the Klein family, all was good.
Oh, that's how it works. So you get the in as long as you're in the
As
family
long as
tree
they
somewhere.
say he's okay, I'm going to trust them. So
Yeah.
So yeah, we started dating at that time. We dated all through high school. Broke up after high school. His parents went through an ugly divorce. Very ugly divorce.
What was
we
the
can talk about
breakup?
it.
Like, you got sick of each other?
No,
or-
he was just afraid the same thing was going to happen to us.
Oh, really?
Divorce.
Yeah,
So
I was not letting that happen again. I was not going to be that way.
we argued a lot.
Yeah,
Okay.
in our younger years, we did not know how to communicate. So
Yeah.
our communication was
Fight.
full on scream and yell.
Really?
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
bad. Like our first 4 or 5 years of our marriage was really bad.
Yeah, I wouldn't.
So-
Have, that would surprise me. Like looking at both of you, pretty mild mannered. Like I can't imagine the.
Don't
mean-
get me stirred up.
Oh.
No, we did. We had a lot of anger management issues. I think, yeah, I won't go into that.
Yeah,
but-
we'll go through. I'm curious about the. So were you like making him a better man? Was he making you a worse? Like, you know what I'm saying, right? For all these people that are out there, like
Yeah.
having this concept,
I
were
don't know
you
how to
being
answer
a?
that.
I mean, were you helping him navigate? Because it sounds like he grew up in church, but I mean, it didn't stick all that well
No.
for
Right.
that concept.
Right.
And that's what I wondered. Like, were you like, hey, I'm going to change him. Hey, I think I
Kind
can
of.
make him better.
There was a lot of, that was back in the days when you had a lot of the revival services for church.
Okay.
We had a lot of guys that really, how do you say, meant a lot to me and really got me thinking a lot.
Okay.
And I was tending to be pretty emotional on some of those and but I would always tend to just revert back and forth.
Okay.
And it really wasn't until later on, after we broke up, I went to basic training. And literally, I can remember this to this day, just like God speaking to me, laying in bed one night. They had just lights out. And on the way down to basic, we went to Indy at the reception center. They had to stand for Gideon Bibles. So I grabbed one, stuck it in my pocket, and started reading. And I can remember that night sitting there in bed, and I could just literally remember God going, "What are you doing?" Because you either got to make a decision. You're either one way or the other. You're not this. There is no riding on the fence. It's either one way or the other. And that was just a very dramatic time in my life to where of the change started of that my faith became real to me. And yeah, just
I didn't even know you were in the military.
yeah.
So when you guys broke up, like you just took off and went to the military?
That was his escape.
That was
Yeah.
I was running the divorce. Been through mom and dad's divorce. We'd lost the farm. Grew up in the lost the farm. Things were not fun at home. It was pretty ugly. I just wanted out. I didn't care where. I literally was driving around. I was going around the block at Huntington, and then the recruiting station used to be right there beside the courthouse downtown. I literally drove out and go, "Hey, there it is." Drove back around the block, parked my truck, walked in. That guy had to think I was a whack. Because I walked in and he's like, you know, they give you the whole spiel. I'm like, sure, okay, whatever, sign me up.
Wow.
So without airing your, like, going into all of it, like, I'm always curious a kid's perspective of divorce, right? So when you say, because I get the ugliness of, like, people getting a divorce because of just everything that goes into, obviously they don't like each other, and obviously you're trying to figure out how to separate assets. But I always wonder, like, what is a kid's perspective when you see your parents get divorced? Like, what was it that you were going through? What was it that you were thinking? Like, what made it ugly in enough that you're saying, I'm out? Like,
It's
the
not so
escape.
much that he was a kid even. I mean, he was 18, 19 years old.
I was a teenager at that time. I kind of went through it. We had just lost the farm. I never realized how much that affected me. But I literally grew up from the time I was big enough to drag a water hose to feeding and watering hogs, and that was my job. We watered hogs, and you went around, and Dad never let us play sports or anything else. So that was my life, the farm. And then he never really communicated with me. I don't know if he didn't think he needed to or what. But then when it all kind of went away, when all went under, I was mad. I put all those years into that and all that time into it. And then in the meantime, I don't think he knew how to deal with it now that I look back. And Satan provided him with his out was another lady. So he got remarried, and he wasn't very good at his dates. And we kind of caught him talking one day that she was around before the divorce ever happened. Because he's literally telling us a story one time, and we're like, wait a second, you guys went on a trip and you aren't divorced yet. You're still together. And that from that point on, I was just a very, very mad.
Yeah. So to bring this back full circle, he was just an angry, mad.
Yeah.
I'm not going to say I was a strong Christian. My faith wasn't where it should have been by any means, but just seeing the ugliness that he was portraying is what caused our arguments.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just think that's so. Again, I'm always curious the hurt, like that, like obviously they can't get along and they move apart, but just the ongoing how it affects kids, and
because then it becomes well, we got Christmas. I hate the holidays because it was whose house are you going to? You go to mom's, you go to dad's, you go to it's just the split, and I just got to the point where I didn't want to be a part of either one of them. It was not fun. So
yeah, and so you leave and take off, and so do you guys stay in contact? I mean, do you still like him?
Yeah, I was heartbroken because he literally just fell off the face of the earth in my book.
He just dumped
left.
you.
Yeah, I mean, it was a mutual breakup, but yeah, he went to South Carolina for basic training, and that was before cell phones, so we just had zero communication. But well, obviously, eventually we did.
because I had started writing you a letter.
Yeah, because when he came back, he went through 6-8 weeks of basic training, and then another 6-8 weeks of AIT, and then came home and asked me to marry him.
Oh my gosh.
What? I was waiting.
So there
We hate
was.
each other, and now we're getting
4
married.
years.
So, no.
I went off to the
But that was a
army,
couple
came back
years in
4
between
years
the whole
later.
thing. It was a couple of
You
years.
asked me when you were home from
Right, but we'd
AIT.
been broke up for a couple
Oh,
of years
right.
before that.
Right.
Oh, before the
Yeah.
taking off part.
Yeah.
You're right.
Because
Yeah,
we had
that's been a long
started
time
talking.
ago. I'm
Because we
having
had
to
started
strain
talking,
everything
hit and
remember.
miss, then just as we ran into each other and stuff. But
But it was when he
wasn't
came
like-
back from the military that we
Yeah.
got engaged. So, yeah, you're right. Sorry.
Oh no, I still like
Timeline of things gets
you
away
guys
from you.
were high school, middle school, 9-year-old elementary sweethearts, right? Like, and then you get to the place where it gets rocky and you break up, and I just wonder how in the world did you ever come back together? Like that's the
We
part that I'm trying to.
We just knew it was
still
meant to
tried
be.
talking. We still, and that was the thing, kind of the time just from growing up, because that was back when you just wrote letters to each other. Well, she
Do you
was.
still have any of them?
Yes.
Yeah.
Do you
Gotta
have any
go
of your
now.
old
Dukes
love
of Hazzard
letters?
is on. That's what he. You don't have any?
I may have one that he wrote me.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the way he
No.
signed
my
one of my
kids
letters.
found love letters, and they were like, not only were they gushy, they're like, Dad, you were saying this to Mom in high school? And I'm like, don't read this.
Was it X-rated or something?
There's probably a few of them that were.
Gosh.
Hey,
Yeah.
I never
Oh.
claimed to be above board. So,
Yeah.
no,
Yeah.
some of them probably were.
Young boy hormones.
Yeah, right. So I'm pretty sure some of that came out. Nick, did you ever live in the letter days, or were you like phone people?
I'm not that young.
Okay, so you actually wrote
Yeah,
you wrote some letters.
I wrote some letters.
Okay. Yeah. Anyway, sorry. So you guys didn't like go off, find other people, come back,
We dated.
Yeah,
we
we
both
both
dated
dated
other
other
people
people.
for a while. Just
but you just like knew it was to be.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Sorry, Jennifer. I kind of just derailed that whole process.
Keep going.
I'm just completely
Just
interested
keep on
in
going.
the whole fact
You're
of
good.
how
Keep
that
on
works.
going.
Yeah. So when you guys choose to get married, right? So you come back, you choose to get married. When you're in the military.
But I went in the reserves.
Okay.
He signed me up for reserves, so I was only gone on weekends and stuff.
Okay.
I never went
So
in
you
full
go to
time.
basic and then you do the whole
Weekend
weekend
warrior
thing.
thing,
Yeah.
yeah.
So you guys come back, you get married, right? So
Get engaged. Yeah.
yeah. So talk to me about, because not that you have to go into great detail. So, but I always think it's good to talk through some of the struggles. That way, like people can know and understand what that looks like. So you said the first part of your marriage was a struggle. Like, can you talk about like what some of the struggles were and then how you got out of them? Because I would say there are a lot of couples in the first couple years of their marriage that, yeah, I mean that everybody thinks that's going to be the easiest time. I think the
No,
first
it's
part of
hard.
it was the hardest.
It's very hard.
Did you when you were married? No.
No, because we moved to Purdue, so we were away from family for 3 years. So it was just him and I. So
Yeah.
we think that was one of the best parts because we didn't have people speaking into our lives. They couldn't come over whenever they wanted to. They couldn't, and so
Yeah,
we
I think
were
that
we
helped.
were away. So
Yeah.
yeah, that helped.
Yeah, so can you talk about what were some of you guys' struggles and then how did you work through them? And at that time, were you guys back in the church? Like, were you?
Yeah, we never left the church.
We kept going, and it just, I think, probably one of the biggest ones was how to communicate correctly.
Okay.
We just kind of did our things, but never. And then another one that it sounds stupid once you've kind of been there, but I can remember Steve and Twyla Lee at one of their marriage seminars going, how to fight fair. And just working through that and what that looks like. Because early on, I can remember her and I having this discussion thinking, well, nobody else's marriage is like this. Why are we the only one that is having all these problems?
Everybody else has a perfect marriage.
And can't figure it out. And it just seemed like it just was this big, you never resolved anything. So it was from one thing to the next.
Yeah.
You went a few days, everything was honky dory, but then by the time you come back to the next time and emotions got high again, you just started over from
Drug
the
everything
previous
from
one
the
and drug it
past.
all.
Yeah, square one.
You never learned how to resolve it.
Right.
And it wasn't until we went to counseling
Oh yeah, we had to go to counseling.
because Howard, I talked to Howard Cherry at that time. He's a huge mentor in my life.
Well, wait a second, because I think that's a big deal. Like, I think there are tons of marriages that need counseling, you know?
Oh, yeah,
And a lot of people won't admit it.
And,
Like, they only come at the end where it's like, can you either do a miracle or tell me it's legal to get divorced?
Correct.
Right? Like, that's usually when I get involved with people, it's usually clear at the end. Not, okay, we're struggling, we got issues, we need to, like, what brought you, how did you get to the place where, I'm going to say humbled yourself, because I still say that's a lot of reason people won't do it, because you admit, if you're going to counseling, then everybody knows.
yeah.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, hey, they're in counseling.
And it's breaking that stigma that sometimes it's so hard for, especially young men, you got your ego. To admit we're all screwed up, we're all messed up.
Yeah.
And then to get to the point that I can't do this myself. I need somebody else to come alongside and look at this and go, well, most of the time it's pretty obvious, but to go, here it is.
So did somebody help you recognize that, or you just come to that on your own?
I started talking with Pastor Howard at the time.
This is the pastorate union.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then he recommended us go to, what was his name? He just passed away a few years. Anyway, we went to a counselor, and that was the best thing we ever did. Should have done it a couple years sooner and saved ourselves a whole lot of misery along the way. And he helped. You don't understand. I didn't understand how much baggage we carry. And if we've never processed that, just like the losing the farm, the divorce, and how things you had growing up. And sometimes it's not necessarily that traumatic things, but it's just how you processed it, of how that transfers over into your marriage. And if you've never taken the time to work through it and to figure it out, it's coming out whether you want it to or not. Sooner or later, it's coming out.
Right.
But it's just getting that help for sometimes somebody to come alongside and go, listen, knucklehead, do you really love this lady? Because here's your responsibility. God lays it out pretty clear.
Right.
And then,
But I still think that's a disconnect. Like, when you say that, like, I still think that's a complete disconnect, because when I do that high school small group on Sunday nights, is so, meet with it, and I did a group of boys last year, and then this year I'm doing a group of boys and girls together, but they're in high school, and so we were on the whole going through, Adam and Eve and sin entered the world, and the whole idea that Adam's standing right there and does nothing about it, but there's a huge responsibility for a man, and guard, protect, lead, you're going to be held accountable for. Now, there's probably 8 guys in this small group, and not one of them, like, their response was, I've never even heard that before. Now, how in the world did we go, like you're saying, like, I get it, it's my responsibility, I need to step up and do it. How in the world do we got these high school boys that don't know that it's their responsibility to lead, protect, take care of, be in the front lines, guard, understand accountability? Like, how did we get so far from that?
because everything they hear now is it's all about me. It's not about her. And that was the thing too, is I had to learn and understand what love really meant, and what true definition of love, because our definition nowadays is so jacked and skewed that how can I love her truly, but if I don't truly understand, and two, and we've talked about this numerous times. We were just talking about it last week. She cannot be my all. It's impossible. She cannot meet all my needs.
Right.
It's impossible.
Right.
If I'm not relying on God for that, because I think you guys just talked about that with Kelly, is you can't meet each other's needs. We have to rely on God for that. If we do, we're putting an unrealistic burden on our spouse.
Yeah, they become God.
Yeah.
Yeah, they become your rock. You know, not that they shouldn't be a part of that, but when they become the replacement for God, that's when it gets unhealthy. And so, Jana, were you encouraging her to be like, go talk to the pastor, we have problems? Or was that just like you came up with that on your own?
It was more Herb that came up with that than me. I was an angry person.
Yeah.
Without going into great detail, I just grew up in kind of an explosive home.
Yeah.
It was a Christian home.
Yeah.
We were always in church, but there was a lot of anger behind the scenes that got put on the back burner when we entered the church doors.
Yeah.
So we entered looking perfect.
Right.
And so I harbored a lot of anger.
And so that kind of carried over.
And it carried over into our relationship. My parents were not touchy-feely at all. They jumped apart if you saw them holding hands or kissing. If somebody kissed on TV, the hands went over my eyes. You know, it was like, so intimacy was not a thing with us because to me it was not supposed to happen.
Right.
It was dirty.
Right.
So between the anger and the even holding hands, his parents modeled it perfectly.
Right.
And then they ended up getting a divorce, which doesn't make sense. But they were very, hands-on, and I didn't want anything to do with it. So I was just angry. So it was him that's like, we got to get help.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Well, I just commend you because that's just not usually the case. It's usually the wife saying, listen, you either get something or I'm out.
I mean, I'm going to say I know we needed it.
Sure.
I didn't fight it.
Right.
But he's the one that brought it to the table.
I think it's just my determination from the time we got married is I'm not doing what I watched happen to somebody else. I'm not going through the divorce thing. And that was the big thing that even the counselor talked about is understanding marriage is a covenant. This isn't okay, I didn't like it, I'm bailing out, I'm going to the next one. This is a lifetime thing. It's figuring it out, and I'm learning to be a student of her and then learning to work through the difficulties. And the crazy part of it is marriage is such a weird thing because it's one of the most awesome things in your life, but yet it's some of the things the most frustrating thing in your life. Because in just about the time you think you get her figured out,
right, things change.
Something comes along.
Yeah,
because you either through kids, you get beyond the kids, then it changes again. It's just that.
Yeah,
and I'm convinced God made it that way so that we see who we really are and understand that I'm not such a great guy as much as I think I am sometimes.
Yeah. No, I think that's the wisdom for the people that are listening and watching. I mean, the wisdom of and seeing this is the way it's supposed to work. Because I'm convinced every single marriage gets to the point where it's on the brink at some point. I mean, they won't admit it, but I'm like, listen, if you're real, every marriage has had those moments of like, this isn't the way it's supposed to be.
Yep.
I'm not that happy. I mean, the levels might be different, but I think that's in. Because, again, I think it's Satan's plan to destroy the family. And I think he uses those tools. And I think there's great wisdom, one, in saying, listen, you shouldn't have to wait on your wife to tell you I'm leaving before we go get help. Right? Like, you shouldn't have to do that. And as a man, you should look at it and say, it is my responsibility to bring my family together and make the difference and be the one that leads the process. I just think it's a rarity, but young men that are listening or watching or whoever's out there, for a man to step up, say, we need help, humble himself, because that's the other part of it. Most men won't do it because they don't want to show that they need it, and then be able to see the outcome, right, of, wow, I could actually learn something.
Well, that, and I think, too, we got to change the voice that they hear on the outside, because from the outside, it says people are saying that's a weakness, that you're not strong, whereas in my mind, that's a strength. That's a strong man that can help and understand that I'm okay with it. I'm not getting this. I'm not I'm not making the right changes I need. I need somebody else to go
A strong man would be
come on
somebody
to-
who could ask for help.
ask that help and go, it's okay. That's a good thing. That's not a bad thing.
Yeah. But it is abnormal.
Yeah.
I mean, for men. Like, for men to ask for help, I think for sure is a
Yeah.
stigma.
Yeah.
You know, in a lot of areas, whether it's work, whether it's home life, whether it's my spirituality, whether it's like, I think the idea that you can't do it on your own is a sign of, like, men see it as a sign of weakness.
I would agree. Yeah.
Yeah. So fast forward, so you guys, you get it together, right? And things start to go on the right track. So kind of walk us through that journey of, you know, because if people don't know, like, you end up as missionaries in Papua New Guinea. And so if you were, I mean, if you're sitting here listening to your story, you're like, you're
How the
here.
heck did that?
Yeah, like, how did you get to the place where you're willing to sacrifice it all? Because, I mean, again, leaving for the mission field is not and leaving for Papua New Guinea. I mean, it's not like
Far
going
away
to-
as you can possibly get.
Right, that's what I'm saying. It's not like you're leaving and going
Right.
to Mexico. Not
Yeah.
that it's,
Right.
but that's a pretty big leap.
It is a very big leap.
So, what prepared you guys to get to the place where, again, you answer what I would consider the ultimate call is we're all missionaries and we're missionaries all the time and we should be missionaries in every realm that we're in. But that place where people always ask the question, this is one, would I die for Christ? Well, that one's a hard one because everybody says they would
Right.
until they want to shoot your wife
Right.
or kids and not
Right.
you.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
that's an easy thing to say. We all want to say that it would be okay for them to murder our whole family and we'd all die for Christ. But the other one always is the same. And we had this discussion last night at men's group is that, like, God doesn't call you to have to be a pauper and have nothing, you know, where when you do have something and he asks you to give it all up, you know, to go do something else, like, I think that's a stretch,
Yeah.
you know, and takes a lot, I think, a preparation process. I don't think you just, like, hey, and be a Christian and just give it all up. So can you talk about how God prepared your hearts or got you to that place where, not that it was an easy decision, but a decision that you said yes to?
Well, yeah. God worked on his heart a lot earlier than mine.
Okay.
I had no desire for missions
Okay.
whatsoever. Never even entered my mind. Had no desire. We got married in 1989. Had our kids in the 90s. In 1997, so our kids were 10, 12 years old. No, 8, 10 years old. Herb went on a mission trip with a group from the church. He wanted me to go. He begged me to go. I said, nope, no desire. I'm staying in America. I'm not leaving. He went 2 weeks, came back, a totally changed man. I've never seen such a drastic change in a man in my life.
Just being on the mission
Just
field.
being there.
Where'd you go, Herb?
We went to Haiti.
Haiti.
Haiti, yeah.
Yeah.
And what the ugly side of me was I got mad. I got jealous. He bonded with this group. He saw things. He shared things that I would never share. It was just a very selfish side of me that I hate to this day. But anyway, I saw what it did to him and how much it meant to him. This was 97. Fast forward, what? I don't even know.
I'd
5
went on
years?
a couple trips after the
Yeah.
different between that time. I'd went on a couple different trips.
Yeah.
Well, no,
We went together.
we went together because
We
the
went to
one when I came back
Alaska.
from Haiti, I said I saw how it affected you, and I said, okay,
I'm never going on
I'm
another
not
one
going to go
without
on a
you.
trip without you because I don't want that to put a wedge between our marriage. So I said, if the next one's going to go, you have to go with me.
So about 2001.
Yeah, our church I was on the missions board. I've always been an adventurer by heart. I love traveling. I love seeing different places. I signed up. I tried talking to my dad into give me a year to go with YWAM when I was in high school. That was absolute no way. So I've always had that heart to just see and do. And well, then once I went, and so I was involved in missions in our church. And every time I kept hearing, we need blue collar workers on the field because to be able to do things, fix things, a lot of the missionaries.
Alaska, though.
Oh, yeah. our church started supporting a gentleman up in Alaska.
Homer, Alaska.
Yeah, Homer, Alaska. Super, super neat couple. He compares him to the old circuit preacher, only his horse is an airplane, and he ministers to the people down in the Aleutian Islands. So they had wanted somebody to go down and visit with him, just get to know him and everything else.
See
And
their ministry firsthand.
Howard comes up to me again, Pastor Cherry, and goes, I know you want to go. I go, dude, you're talking to the wrong person. I'll go tomorrow. I said, you got to talk to her. You get her to agree, I'm in.
Yeah.
No worries.
What were you doing at the time?
I was a mechanic with McAllister's,
Okay.
field service tech for
Oh,
McAllister.
so you've always done that.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So
Sorry, that was an interruption.
No,
I was
that's
just
all right.
thinking, how do you get away? Like,
Yeah.
because that is a struggle for some people today. Of
Yeah,
like,
absolutely.
having the ability to say, even if I was excited about
Yeah.
doing
Yeah.
work for God, like I can't get off. Or
When I was a hairstylist and I was
She owned her own
business,
business,
so
so-
I could do whatever.
Yeah.
So anyway,
I agreed to go.
she agreed to go. Her and I and the youth pastor went up and visited him.
And then I
Homer, Alaska is one thing. That's a different part of America that most people don't understand is that's America, but that's a different world.
Oh, yeah.
put the Aleutian
And then
Islands-
we flew down for 3 hours south, straight down into the Aleutian Islands, and then
the
visited
Bering
there for a
Sea.
few days, and went down another two hours, and then hung a hard right out into the Bering Sea, and went to another little island called the Nelson Lagoon. It's a fishing island. 12 families on the island, barely big enough for a runway and 12 houses, and it's strictly a fishing place for all the people to fish. God really worked on her heart there to see that this is still America, because the house we stayed in was rough. I
Yeah.
mean, real rough.
Yeah. So, Jana, how did you do? I mean, again, how did you do with the whole? Because that part of like when we would take trips to Guatemala all the time. So, I mean, we didn't stay in rough conditions, but when you would hike up into the mountains, like we have to stay in churches, and I mean, everybody's getting bug bites, and
Right.
you're pooping in the place that, I mean, is the
no hot water.
I mean, that outhouse is like,
Oh,
yeah. I
yeah.
mean, if you do have hot water, it's from a Widowmaker,
Yeah.
you know, that you're not sure if it's going to work or not.
Yes,
so, Like,
exactly.
was any of that a issue for you? Like, I don't know where,
I mean, I struggled
okay.
on a daily basis. I was like, what am I doing here? I can't do this. But when you're there and you don't have any other choice,
Yeah.
you just make it work.
Right.
So I did. We lasted there for what? We were there for week and a half.
Yeah, week
Came
and a
back
half.
home and I felt super, super guilty, convicted about all that I had. It's like I went into my house and I just cried.
Yeah.
It's like, this is crazy. I just lived for 2 weeks without any of this.
Right.
Why do I have all this?
Yeah.
But I still wasn't convinced I was going to be a missionary.
Yeah. Right. But God was stirring.
But God was
something.
starting to stir me at that point. Trying to remember the sequence of things.
We
I
had
remember that was the first time I'd ever committed to reading the Bible through in a year, and I journaled along with that. And I kept telling God every day when I prayed and I journaled, it was like, okay, you put me together with this man who loves you and longs to serve you. He's the love of my life. I need to somehow come alongside of him. Some way, somehow. I still don't want to leave home, but if I leave home, not too far from home. But anyway, God just started opening my heart just through that journaling and devotion time. It was really cool. So then that led us to Barbados.
we
went
had
to
started
Barbados
talking about looking at opportunities to serve.
with Operation Mobilization,
Yeah, so we actually went down and spent a couple weeks on one of the ships.
thinking we were going to serve with them permanently.
ship.
Were you taking your kids with you on any of these?
We did.
Okay.
We went
Not
down
to
that-
Alaska, but
Right.
to Operation.
Yeah, to Barbados we did. Worked on a ship for a couple weeks. That kind of just logistics wasn't going to work. Just the whole scenario of it wasn't working out right, and we
And at
came
this
back.
point, you're processing like, okay, we're trying to find the place we want to be
Yes,
full-time missionaries.
yes. So
Kind of. I was still wishy-washy.
Yeah.
So-
right.
But I was
You're
more
hoping-
open
if
to
you,
it.
oh yeah,
You're,
so
you're hoping and
I'm
praying.
like she's
if I
not.
get her to enough places, she's gonna pick the one, and we're gonna go.
So literally, like a few months later, we were down.
When Barbados didn't work out, I was sealed in my mind. We were done. Missions was out of the picture. So now you
Okay.
can go.
So a few months later, I was online looking. One of our families that we supported was down in Panama. They were one of the last families down in Panama, and they just started the teaching down there. So I was online, kind of doing some follow up with them and talking and look with where they were at. And I seen that NTM at the time had a
New Tribes Mission.
New Tribes Mission had a associate program. That's interesting. Click on it. You could go from 4 weeks,
6 months to
6
4
months to
years.
4 years, and it's blue collar. Well, it's basically there's a list, literally pages of jobs from everything from accounting, teachers, mechanics, what other. So I thought, all right. So I type in diesel mechanic. Pink up pops 2 countries, 2 of them, 2 opportunities. One was like, no, and the other one was like Papua New Guinea. I'm like, I don't even know where Papua New Guinea was.
Yeah.
But I thought,
Neither does anybody else.
No.
but I'm like, okay. So I started filling out the questionnaire because I
At
clicked
the
married.
computer while the kids and I are
They're
watching a movie. I don't know what he's doing.
I click submit because I click married, it pops her form up.
That is hilarious.
So I go, hey, Jana, why don't you come here and take a look at this and fill this, just see what it is. And she's like, what are you doing? I said, it's an associate program. Give her the skinny on it. I said, it's not going to hurt anything. I said,
Yeah.
what could happen?
Right.
I go to work. At that time, I'm out of the house by 4:30, 5
This was
o'clock.
at 10 o'clock at night.
Yeah,
so the
I
next
go to the
morning.
house. I leave. She calls me at 9 o'clock in the morning going, what the heck did you do? She goes, I've been on the phone the last 2 hours
They
with
called me at 7 a.m.
Nuh-uh.
New Tribes Mission.
New Tribes Mission going, they really, really want somebody. They'd been looking for a mechanic for a long time before that. We found out after we got there, talking, just another God thing, 2 weeks prior to me going online, they'd had mechanic for a year almost, got no hits on it. Changed it to diesel mechanic, and I click it up 2 weeks later.
Seriously. Wow.
So long story short, they called us, and they're like, well, this is March,
1st of March.
1st of March. They go,
Can
think
you be here by
June? I'm like,
Wow.
I've been around a few families getting ready to go to the field, and that's usually like a couple year process.
Right.
But I go, here's the deal. I said, I know who's in charge, I know how this works. I said, you start sending this paperwork, because there is a ton of paperwork to fill out
Just
before
applications.
all the application process and everything else. We were accepted in May
And on the field in September.
and on the field in September.
How did the kids take it?
It was amazing how they took it.
Okay.
To backtrack just a little bit, it was before we went to Barbados, I
Yeah.
believe.
Yeah, we were sitting
But
down.
we just had a little family meeting, and it's like, look, we feel God calling us somewhere to do something. We
And how
don't
old
know
are
what
they
that
at this
looks.
point?
They were 12,
No.
nope,
10
11
and-
and 8
11
when
and
we
8.
left for the field. So
Yeah.
they would have been probably 10
Yeah,
and
either
7.
way. Yeah.
But we said, we don't know what it looks like. And they're like, I don't think they fully understood it,
Yeah,
but they're
for
like,
sure.
okay.
Yeah.
And then when we told them we were going, they never fought it.
No,
Never.
they were both on board.
Not once.
don't
I
think-
mean,
none of us
they might tell us differently now. I don't know.
None
but
of us had any idea of what we were getting into. We just packing everything up, and then so that was the thing too. Is a really cool. I'll trade it quick. Is God had been wrestling with Jana on. I
had been
own everything
wrestling
you
with
have.
God.
Everything I have is everything you have is mine.
Right.
So you can either relax, let me be in charge, or if something happens and I decided to take something, it's going to hurt a whole lot worse. And she used the example of an open hand.
Closed
Because
Prying my
if you got to
fingers
rip it
open.
out of your hand, it's going to hurt. But if
Yeah.
you leave it open for God to do what He wants to do,
Yeah.
and that was just there's so many side stories of just everything clicked.
Right.
One boom, boom, boom. I mean, obviously, if anybody knows, that is not the norm and does not happen. And we left for the field 100% supported.
Yeah, and so can you talk about, just from a time standpoint, like can you talk about, so you get there, so can you talk a little bit about your experience, in the mission field and how that went from, I'm assuming, do you both have jobs out there when you're doing it? And
Yes.
how does that all work with kids? And
Yeah.
maybe just give us some highlights of some things that
Yep.
you guys did and what went on. And
Yeah, we went to, it was called Interface. It was a high-level missions course,
It was a college level missions
college
course.
level missions course in the middle of the jungle
And
for
Papua New-
people from all over the world, college age, to come
It's an
and learn
intro.
about missions. So we worked on this campus. I worked in the business office alongside some of the nationals that lived there, just to keep the place running. Herb was, of course, the diesel mechanic. And there was a mission school about
It was 11 miles. It was 11
11
miles door to door.
and about an hour drive.
Yeah. Rainy season, that turned into an hour and a half, 2 hours.
So our kids went to the mission school, which that was awesome in itself because we had pre-field training orientation in Sanford, Florida, prior to going. So we met a bunch of the associate program people that were going to the same place as we were. They were all going before the school year started. We weren't going to get there for like 2 months in. So they got there. We made close relationships with them. They started writing to our kids because some of them were teachers. They wrote to our kids. They took pictures of their classmates. They took pictures of the school. They went into the home we were going to live in and took pictures of the home and told us what all we needed. So that helped prepare our kids.
Right.
Just, they knew kids before they got there.
Right.
They just, they were ready to go.
Yeah. It was because, like, I was a mechanic when we were out there. Partway through our term, they were short dorm parents the one year, so they asked us to go into the headquarters to be dorm parents. So we went into where the school was, and we were dorm parents to 8 kids for a year.
Not my forte.
That was
That was eye-opening.
it was good. It was eye opening, but it was good.
We
And
had
then
11 kids, 6th grade through 12th grade.
yeah, and then after that, I became easiest way to explain it is because the infrastructure in Papua New Guinea is not the greatest, so we had to create our own infrastructure. Easiest way to explain it, I was a town manager, so I had all the nationals that worked for me and helped oversee. And if once you become any sort of mechanic, anything mechanic, that can be anything from phone systems to washing machines to you name it, you're it. And there's a few times like we had like the gensets, the engine part, I'm good. Electrical, no.
Right.
But we had literally teams coming over and we shucked a rod through the side of the block on a generator. Had to redo a bunch of stuff. And me and God had some serious, intense fellowship over what the heck is this all about? I mean, it was greatest time, but there were some times to where you're like, God, if there's an airplane tomorrow, I would be out of here so fast. But it was one of the greatest gifts we were ever given.
Yeah. So can you talk about like over there? What did God do in your heart? Like, I know you did a bunch of things, but what was it over there? Because I want to like talk about that and then talk about the adjustment of having to come back. Because I think that is
That was hard.
That is
extremely hard.
In my opinion, that's a huge struggle.
Oh, yeah.
When you're out there serving in a place and then you come back to this, it's a big shift. So maybe some things that in the mission field that you felt like God did, not specific things, but maybe for you personally.
Yeah. You got anything?
I would say the biggest, my life verse I've always kind of held onto is Proverbs 3, 4, 5, and 6. That like just totally come to life for me there of just, you have to trust in God. And even when we were getting ready to go, it has to be a God thing. And that was one of kind of my things to, even because I'm an adventurer, was God, this has to be you. This cannot be me or it's not going to work.
Right.
And he just over and over again just proved to me, I got this, just stay calm, let me do it. And I mean, there's, like I said, sometimes some of the cultural stuff, we can all learn that just because it's different doesn't mean it's wrong, but that doesn't mean that it's the easiest thing to understand or accept. And that was just trusting in God through that. Being a patient, when it comes to my job, I'm pretty driven on get it done, knock it out, go.
Right.
Yeah, that's not happening over there.
Yeah, right.
Hurry
Takes
up and
forever
wait.
to get it done.
There's a 45-minute conversation for one. If the guys come around that before you even know what they're coming for or visit or anything like that, and it's just learning to trust that was a cool thing. That was fine. That's okay. And it just mostly is just the relying on God that no matter what the situation, and even getting ready to go, we had so many people ask us, or people even today ask, "Weren't you afraid?" And I'm like, No.
Yeah.
I said, it's the same God that's here, that's everywhere. He created this big blue ball that we sit on.
That's because they watched Into the Spear and they thought like you guys were Jim Elliott flying into the.
That's the same organization we went with.
Was it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Did you see Into the Spear?
Yeah.
Oh,
I mean, there is those, but at the same time, there's a hymn that I want to talk about. Is we used to sing that I can't really sing anymore. It's I surrender all.
yep.
It's just because do we say it?
But will you do it?
Will
But
you
do
do
you
it?
mean it? Yeah.
Do you mean it? I
Will
mean,
you
that's those are some big words that can get pretty ugly.
Yeah. Yeah. So that was the big thing when you were there, like the learning to surrender to
Yep.
the plan that God has. And
Yep.
Yeah, so-
Because it's not always yours, and you're not always ready for what. But the crazy thing of it is, once you grasp that, he just wants you to be obedient.
yeah.
He wants you to go and be obedient, and he's got it. More times than not, he's going to put you in situations that you're not ready for.
Right.
But he's got it.
Right. Yeah. So you guys then transition out. How long were you there?
7 years.
Wow. That's a long time. I didn't think it was that long. So,
We signed up with the associate program, which was anywhere from 6 months to 4 years.
okay.
We chose the 4 years at that time just because
We were going.
we're doing this. We're doing it. We're doing it all. We're not just going to go for 6 months and turn around and come back. So we sold everything, our house, everything, went for 4 years. And at the end of 4 years, they came to us and said, it's not the norm, but would you consider going full time with us? So we left the associate program and went full time, thinking that's going to be
That was
the
our
rest
life.
of our life.
Right. Doing the same things you were doing.
Yeah.
Just, committing
But
to
then 3 years later, Alicia was a senior, so she graduated from high school over there. And we were coming back that year anyway to get her settled into college back here, visit family, raise support for a year. But at that time, when we got home, well, during that year period, the recession took place. It was just, our support dropped quite significantly. We had people just, they couldn't afford to keep us on, so that dropped. We came home, got her back here, and my mom's health was failing quite tremendously. And I have a special needs brother who she always took care of him, and she wasn't able to do that anymore. Long story short, we just felt like God was calling us to be there for them and not turn around and just leave again.
Right.
So at that time, we just put it on hold and decided to stay back here, not thinking that was going to end it, but it ended up ending it because they needed our full-time care. So it was a very, very difficult decision.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And how hard? So talk about the adjustment. What was the biggest adjustment to being back? What still is the biggest adjustment to being back from the mission field? How long have you been back?
We
almost
came back we were
11.
done in the field in 2012.
12. Okay.
Yeah, so it's been a good many years now. But
It's just, I don't know. It was sometimes the narrow-mindedness of people of not being willing to
step outside of their
step
box.
outside the box or even accept other people just because people are different than you. That, like I said, different is not bad. Just because people do. I mean, we see the immigrants coming over, the Burmese and all the different things, the different people groups that come into the United States. I'm not going to the political side of it, but yeah, they're people. We as believers are still called to love unconditionally and do what we can. They're people. And I feel like people won't even give them a chance because they're different and they do things different. And that's always a really hard thing. And then just the stuff.
Yeah.
This stuff and how everybody is pushed. Back then I wrote in the front of my Bible, busy being under Satan's yoke, and I have it highlighted in the front of my Bible.
Oh, wow.
And that's like the only thing you hear nowadays is everybody runs 200 mile an hour. And it's like, maybe slow down with your family, slow down to
That's the biggest thing.
regroup. That's probably
we had so much quality family time there, and now here it's just like
You get back in the rat race.
everybody's
then you get back in the
just
rat
running,
race. And
running.
just, I mean, the stupid thing, one of the most overwhelming things was a grocery store. We literally walked in, walked back out. It was just
Too
you
many
walk
choices.
in, you're in there. You're in a country where if you see it on a shelf, you probably better grab it because it's not necessarily going to be there next week or the next month or anything like that.
Right.
To come in here where there's like 50 varieties of the same thing, and you're just like overwhelmed with it. You just it's like I'm out. I gotta go. I gotta regroup.
Right. Right. Yeah, that's a huge. I mean, again, I think the adjustment back, which I think is interesting too, because when you learn on the mission field, you know, the integration into culture and understanding people for the sake of giving them the gospel.
Yep.
Right. And so the funny thing is that America is a cultural melting pot anyway. So
Yep.
the idea of being a missionary in America, but the problem is that we don't want to get out of our culture.
Yeah.
Right.
If we're not white, middle class,
Right.
you know what I mean, fits
Very
your
true.
social economic demographic, you know, what even to the point of what you like, the things that you like. We struggle to expand our borders out to understand the culture of other people just for the idea of giving them Jesus. And we wonder why the churches don't grow.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. It's should have been a clue when we were going through our pre-training thing that like they spent like 2 weeks on conflict resolution, but I just some reason that never like engaged in my head till you get to the field and you're like, holy smokes, we're all believers, we're all Christians,
Right.
But there's still
but there's
conflict.
so much difference in just West Coast, East Coast in the U.S. Then you add in England, China,
Right.
all the different countries, and then you divide it. Then you actually get to the people that you came to in the other culture,
Right.
on whatever country you're in. It's like, whoo,
Yeah.
alrighty.
Yeah. Yeah. So as we're here at the end, I think the big question that I think most people through your story are going to ask, what can I do to prepare myself to surrender? Because I think that what you just said, that concept of hard to sing it today because the words take on meaning, but the understanding as a Christian person, that's what we're called to do, is
Right.
to surrender, but probably the hardest thing to do, like to surrender. I surrender all, right? Like to get to the place where you're willing to, like Jana said, live with open hands. Don't get them pried open all the time. That's way more difficult. If the young people that are watching, couples that are watching, people that are watching, what are some things that they can do to get their heart to a place where they're willing to surrender? Not that there's a magic pill, but
Right.
just, I mean, is there something like that you would recommend to them?
One of the first things that come to my mind is just put others first. Don't put somebody else first. Do something not about you. Life's not all about you. Put them first and get out of your box to study, whether it's your spouse, whether it's your siblings, kids, even young kids. Do we really know each other? Do we take the time? And as a kid, I never did, but it's just taking the time to put other people first and understand. And then you just kind of expand that out to the people that are around you. I mean, you don't have to drive too far around Huntington. You see the homeless people and all that, and just there's opportunities. It's
Sure.
not about us. Get beyond yourself.
Yeah.
And I mean, God reminds us sometimes to die to ourselves. That's
Yeah. Every day.
Every day.
Right.
Yep. And if you have to. That's got to be a daily thing that conversation between you and God.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, it's too easy for Satan to come in and want to pump you up.
Right. Right.
And for me, it was just surrendering myself to daily be diving into the Word and journaling and talking to God and listening to God.
Yeah.
That's not an easy thing to do.
Right.
And that was literally at, how old were we when we went? 38? I was 38 years old before I ever did that for the first time. And it was real. And I really felt God talking to me. So it didn't really feel like surrendering to me.
Right.
I just felt like, this is what we're supposed to do. We'll do it.
Right.
But yeah, just being open to just sit and listen.
Yeah. One other thing that I did that I would recommend, it's not easy to do, especially in today's world, is mimic what Jesus did. Get away. Before we left to the mission field, I literally took our camper and put, I think, some crackers, some water, very minimal food, and I went to the campground and shoved it back in the farthest corner I could find and spent, I don't know, it was 3 or 4 days, just my Bible and God. And that was a huge thing of just get away, listen to him, what he's got to say. I think sometimes we're so busy vocalizing what's going on in our own world, we don't give him a chance to really speak into our lives. That was a huge thing in my life of that time of getting away.
Yeah. Yeah. And isolating yourself. So you have to, whether it's through journaling, reading, isolation and prayer, whatever those, those things are. Yeah. So again, we're at the end. So, I mean, it reminds me, you know, a lot of my early years was doing a lot in the mission field, and I say a lot, did a lot of mission trips and led a lot of mission trips, and, you know, it's been a while. So just hearing you guys share about, like, just reminds me of what it used to feel like every time that you were there, the whole reminding of, and used to say, you know, the best thing you could ever do for your children is get them into the mission field, because I guarantee you their perspective on life changes when they spend time with
Very much so.
people that are completely happy with very little. And it's just a big perspective change. And I don't know why this is, but a lot of my youth kids to this day from way back when will be like, it was the first time that I really saw God move. You know what I mean? There's just something that happens when you get away on a mission trip, whether it's, some people are like, well, God only does that in other countries. He can't do it in the United States. And I'm like, I don't really know. I think it's more about you being open.
Right.
And like your heart is just like, what else are you going to do? You're out there serving the Lord. You've hiked to the top of a mountain. You're eating crappy food. You've put yourself in a position of surrender, whether you like it or not. You have to at that point. And it's just, I think it's funny to see the way God works, you know, in those situations. So through your story, I mean, that's the thing that just kept resonating with me is if we could just get to a place where if we could learn, whether it was your humility in the beginning to be able to fix your marriage. I guess not that it was broke, but needed.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
needed help.
Humility. That was a piece of surrender. You know, to get to the place where your heart was open. You know, to be able to get to the place where you're willing to give it all up. And then once you're even there, I think this is the other part people forget is even when you take a step, you're still surrendering. Like on the mission field, you know,
Absolutely.
you know,
Wherever it
when
may
you're
be.
over there, whatever that stuff looks. And even the fact of, and I've heard you guys talk about this, is that, you know, when I say it wasn't by choice, I mean, it's not like you left the mission field disgruntled.
Right.
Like you felt like God was working. And so it was another surrender, right? Like you had to leave and come back to another thing that God called you to do. And so I just think it's exciting for people that are listening and for your story of learning a lifetime of surrender. And I'm super excited that you guys are at Life and that we can, you know, be on that journey with you guys and watch the things that God continues to do with you and through you. And, you know, that tons of people can learn, you know, from that. And you can, maybe you're our new, like, missions team, right? Like,
That popped in my head, so, you know, you never know.
We need to get back overseas again.
Yeah,
you know,
that'd be awesome.
on some mission trips. So, again, thank you. Really appreciate it. For you guys that are, whether you're watching or listening, don't forget when this comes out on Friday. That's right, Nick? Did I say it right?
Yes.
Okay, yeah. He said it beforehand. I couldn't remember when it's going to come out. So when this comes out this week, you know, make sure you like, share, comment, because that be able to get this feed on onto other people's feeds so they can see your story, that they can watch it. And then also, are you guys second service? First service.
First service.
Yep.
So if you come to the first service, make sure you look there in the middle, like
I'm just always amazed. You know where people sit.
15
I mean,
rows back, 16 rows back.
Underneath the
On
screen,
that's what I
TV
say, on the
screen.
outside edge, like you usually.
Yep.
Wow.
That's where
You pay
got-
attention, don't
Oh,
you?
I
and he's preaching and he sees all
Yeah.
this stuff happening. It's amazing.
Yeah, no.
Yeah,
So
you're
that
amazing.
make sure you come up and say hi, because again, I think that especially for a lot of people in our church today, they could learn a lot from you and that they would benefit from a relationship and wisdom. And so come up, say hi, make sure you again take an opportunity to not only say hi, possibly build a relationship and
That'd be awesome.
yeah, see where that goes from there. So
Yeah.
thank you, and thanks everybody for listening and watching. We'll see you guys next week.
Bye.